Ahoy, everyone! My name is Bobby Shortle, and I'm here with Nick Rocco Scalia, and we are the Intrepid Filmographers. Every mini-series, we chart a course through the full filmography of an under-discussed genre or journeyman filmmaker. In this expedition, we do our best to try and be explorers, using our years of film knowledge to help guide us, but always being open to discovering new things about the medium we love so much. This time, we leave our usual journey and walk the path of discussing one of the biggest directors of all time, Peter Jackson. And we kick off with his first film, the horror comedy Bad Taste, and find out if we too can shove a severed testicle into our fractured skull. Nick, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good. This is our first no-budget movie on the show, and I'm very excited about that.
Funny, right, that it's our first no-budget movie on the show, and yet it's the biggest director we've covered by far so far.
Yeah, it's the biggest career arc, I think. It's the longest filmography, and it is the sort of most rags to riches sort of story. Maybe Karen Kusama also, but you know, she had the backing of John Sayles and spent a lot of time developing her first. Well, I guess Peter Jackson did as well. This is also the first time we're doing a listener pick.
Yes.
You told us, those of you out in Radioland told us what filmmaker to do after Joe Wright, and here we are.
So if you're jumping on the show for the first time because it's Peter Jackson, which totally makes sense, you know, like I said in the opening, our usual sort of pitch is we're doing directors and filmographies that are not necessarily unknown, but maybe you know the movies, you don't know the director, or you know one movie this director made, but oh wow, they made a bunch of other movies, right? That's usually our sort of our vibe and feeling. We started with Joseph Kosinski, who obviously is now a very big time director, but, you know, made Tron Legacy as his first film, then made a bunch of stuff, and then made Top Gun, Maverick, and now he's making F1. Did Karen Kusama, who made Girl Fight and Jennifer's Body, a very much different filmography. We did Ben Affleck as well, and then we did Joe Wright, Pride and Prejudice, Atonement, and such. But we're doing Peter Jackson today, and you said, like, it's funny because, you know, even Kusama, right, who probably is the closest, right, that we're looking at comparatively here. All the other three directors we did big movies. Like their first movie was a pretty big movie, you know, considering like the cast and all that kind of stuff. You know, Kusama, who started with Girl Fight, which is this great movie with Michelle Rodriguez, her first movie ever, Michelle Rodriguez. You know, Karen Kusama still went to film school at NYU and had all these connections and stuff like that. So like
that movie cost $1 million. So it's not a no-budget movie. It's a low-budget movie, but it's not a no-budget movie.
Yes. You know,
didn't take her 4 years to make it with her friends.
No, and shouldn't live in some place that didn't have like a very famous at the time film scene in New Zealand and all of this kind of stuff, right? And also, there's not many things that we'll ever cover on this show, I can almost guarantee, that are going to be as bonkers as the first three movies we're going to cover in this miniseries. So
never say never, I would say.
Never say never, but it's going to be tough. So this is a miniseries on the films of Peter Jackson, as we talked about. And we're going through his entire filmography from his first movie to the last movie he made. Theatrical narrative films. We're not going to be covering the documentaries like, what is it? And They Will Live Forever, or They Will Live On, the World War I documentary he did, or the Beatles like 6-hour Disney Plus documentary, both of which I've seen and greatly enjoyed, but not something we're going to cover on this show. But something we'll discuss, obviously, when we're getting towards the end of his narrative filmography, because I think it's interesting to talk about like where he goes after, you know, certain things. So yeah, we're kicking off with Bad Taste, and, you know, it's a good place. The first movie obviously is always a great place to talk about, you know, the history of the filmmaker a little bit before their first movie, right? Because once we dive in, we'll be talking a lot about the filmmaker outside of the movie, right? But not so much their entire history, right? More of just like what led them to this particular project, or how does this project sort of reflect back on the other projects they've done. But this is our chance to really biography the filmmaker a little bit. But I think before we get into that, Nick, I think just to set the level here, you know, Peter Jackson in general, what's your experience with his filmography? You've seen everything, you know, obviously he has some really big movies in the latter half of his filmography, but, you know, have you seen everything? What's your general, in the year of 2025 when I'm recording this, what is your feelings on Peter Jackson?
I'm a big fan. I think I've seen everything. I mean, I can't think of anything that he's made that I was like, no, I'm not going to bother with that, or I just haven't gotten to that yet. He hasn't made a narrative feature in a while.
Long time.
Done a lot of producing and worked with other people who I like a lot, like Guillermo del Toro. We'll get into those films as well a little bit later. But yeah, I was kind of not to be like that hipster that I always try not to be and always somehow end up sounding like anyway. But I feel like I was on board the Peter Jackson train a little before some people. I really, really liked the movie The Frighteners when it came out in 96. I think I saw that like right when it came out. I was pretty young at the time. And that made me go back and watch Dead Alive / Brain Dead. Absolutely loved that. And so by the time he gets to making the Lord of the Rings movies, I'd already seen some of what he was capable of. I didn't know he was going to be capable of that. That's why I think it's going to be a really interesting story, right? Because, The Frighteners is it's a studio comedy. It's a movie with a lot of special effects, and Michael J. Fox is in it, and it's got some star power, and it's a studio movie, but like it is a medium scale studio movie. And then he kind of goes later on, not too long after that, makes films that are just, on a scale that no one had ever really touched before.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was very interesting also. But yeah, I was really enjoying kind of the low budget splatter auteur Peter Jackson, which we'll be talking about for the next few weeks. And then he goes on and becomes like the biggest filmmaker in the world, making the biggest movies in the world, movies that still kind of resonate with people just the same as they did when they came out. I mean, it's not like Avatar or something where it's like, the memories of Lord of the Rings are still very fresh and very fond. And not that I think Avatar 2 is really great. We'll maybe get to James Cameron at some point. I hope so. But yeah, so I've always kind of followed his career. I've always been interested in seeing what he was doing. And, I know he's had some missteps along the way, but I always feel like Peter Jackson's name on the film is kind of a seal of quality. And I love, and I'm looking forward to talking about it actually, where he comes from. I love filmmakers that kind of start in this no budget sort of realm, this backyard filmmaking sort of world. I mean, that's what Spielberg did too. He just happened to live very close to the mecca of Hollywood movie making. And, USC is basically in his backyard, and then he goes there, but he's making low budget alien movies in his backyard, like precursors to E.T. and stuff like that. So Peter Jackson's like that, but on the other side of the world and with even less money and less sort of prospects to immediately jump into the studio system. So, it is, like I said, it's a real rags to riches story, and, riches beyond imagining, because those movies are so big, are so beloved, are so popular. And, he's basically got a free pass to do whatever the hell he wants for the rest of his life. So that's kind of interesting too, to go from nothing to, he's God tier at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talked about on the show before, but, Fellowship of the Ring is probably my favorite movie of all time. And I think that, like, when we'll talk about that movie, obviously, in depth when we get to it, so I'm not really going to spend any time talking about it here, but it's, I had seen The Frighteners in 1996, 1997, mostly because I was a big Michael J. Fox fan as a kid, and also just liked kind of scary horror comedies, right? That was sort of like, it was a very easy pitch to me, right? Like Michael J. Fox in sort of like a Ghostbusters-esque thing, right? Which is kind of how they sold it, right? In a lot of ways. But but I saw that movie and like I didn't know who directed it, right? Like, and I was just like, okay, like this is a Michael J. Fox movie is how I viewed it at the time, right? So then
I was a big Leonard Maltin. Sorry, the other piece of the story is I used to read the Leonard Maltin's movie guide like cover to cover, so. I believe I had seen his name in there, and I knew I hadn't seen Dead Alive, but I knew it was kind of notorious for being, one of the grossest movies ever made. So I kind of had an idea of who he was, and it wasn't just, I wasn't on board like Meet the Feebles bad taste era.
Right. Yeah, I get you. And so I didn't really pay much mind. I was like, I like this movie, and it was one of those movies where, as I got later on in high school and then into college, where I was like, not really in college, in high school, being like, oh, people don't like this movie, but I love this movie. And then when Lord of the Rings came out, I obviously fell in love. And that is when I went back and was like, oh, like this is the guy who directed The Frighteners. Like, that was like coming out. And then I went back. I realized though, in watching the movie we watched for this week, that I have never seen this movie. I thought I had seen this movie. I had not seen this movie. I think I was just sort of like mushing that and Brain Dead together, or whatever in the same, or Dead Alive. Sorry. My God. It's Brain Dead and Dead Alive are the same movie, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So,
two titles.
Yeah, two titles. Yeah. So I was mixing up that movie and this movie in a kind of like a squished way. So I had never seen this, and I've never seen Meet the Feebles either. So next week will also be a new movie for me watching. Obviously, I know a lot about it.
Seen Meet the Feebles, yeah.
Yeah.
stories for both of those. Not that either one of those is interesting or either one of them is important, but Bad Taste, it was on VHS, so it didn't get a DVD release till 2001, like probably right around the time people were checking out Lord of the Rings. And I had an amazing video store like right in my neighborhood growing up. The guy who ran it, his name was Carmine. He passed away a couple years ago. Really, really nice guy. Actually was a filmmaker. He made some movies himself, which got national release, B-movie, schlocky stuff. He made a movie called Galactic Gigolo, who he starred in it. I don't know if you've ever heard of that one from...
No, I've not.
Right around the same time as Bad Taste. It's about a space alien with a broccoli penis who comes down to Earth and tries to make whoopee with Earth females.
Okay.
Typical B-movie stuff.
As you do.
As you do. So he ran a video store like literally right in my neighborhood in Waterbury, Connecticut, which had a huge cult section because he made cult movies and really liked cult movies. And I wasn't really into that stuff. This is when I was in like 5th, 6th grade or something, but I'd go in the store and rent whatever crap that I was watching at the time. And then I'd kind of wander around the cult section like, man, these movies are weird and crazy and sexy. And I kind of want to see all of them. And I definitely remember the Bad Taste, the alien on the cover. I think he had the one, there's like a lenticular cover where if you turn it one way, it looks like the alien's giving a peace sign. You turn it the other way and it looks like the alien's flipping the bird. So, of course, as a 6th grader or whatever, I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
So that's where I knew about that, and also Meet the Feebles as well, which I didn't see till later because I rented that once, because I was trying to like torture people with a movie, and I figured that would be a good one to do it with. Yeah, fond video store memories. Rest in peace. Really, really good guy. Carmine Capobianco was his name. And, interesting little fixture of kind of the local Connecticut movie making scene, which there really wasn't one aside from him.
Right. Yeah. Those guys kind of become legendary in their own little like pocket, right? In those scenarios.
I've always thought it'd be cool to just make a documentary. There's a couple others. Gorman Bechard was a filmmaker that worked with him. He's out of New Haven, has made a bunch of pretty high profile documentaries at this point. So there was a little like a punk rock sort of scene going on here, and it'd be fun if someone kind of chronicled that. So maybe I'm the guy.
Maybe you're the guy, Nick.
But also maybe I'm not the guy.
Pull the trigger. Get yourself $11,000 or whatever, $25,000
Sure.
and make it. A little bit on, Peter Jackson himself, from a working class, family. His father was a wages clerk. His mother was a factory worker. So not coming from, I'm rich and so I'm bored and I'm going to do filmmaking, not that.
Lived
not
in like the most beautiful place imaginable. But it was basically a working class family in the setting of Lord of the Rings, right?
Exactly.
He basically lived in the Shire.
Exactly.
On the ocean, though. Like, it'd be even better than the Shire, really.
You can see it all over this movie, right?
Yep.
So,
it's
obviously
just basically his backyard. Inspired
by a lot of filmmakers, Harryhausen, obviously a big one. Obviously, we know from his career, King Kong is something that Peter Jackson is incredibly inspired by, right? But I think just as importantly, something, stuff like, he lists Monty Python as a huge inspiration for him, which is quite obvious in this movie especially. But I think in most of his career, there is never a point where humor is very far away, even when he's dealing with something very serious there as well. Obviously, like not noted as much as a childhood inspiration, but Sam Raimi also, who makes Evil Dead in 1981, 1981, right?
81 is Evil Dead, yeah.
Oh, and he also spent, many years making this low budget, like kind of nasty horror comedy. Obviously Evil Dead did a lot less comedy than will come later, but I think obviously a kind of tentpole, like, oh, I can do this kind of person, right?
And there's a market for this at the time. I mean, this is exactly. Like the height of the VHS era where basically if you could get a movie made, you could get it distributed, get it in stores, and people are going to see it. I mean, that's the Evil Dead story, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Takes a lot of money to make it, but people will invest in it because you can get some return on that investment at this point.
Absolutely. He was making short films as a child, like you mentioned at the open, much like a lot of these really kind of huge filmmakers that you hear about in the annals of history, right? And he tries to make when he's a kid, he tries to make King Kong. So, there's a long road for him to get there. Some James Bond parody, just a bunch of, stuff that kids do, obviously probably at a way different level than we were doing when we were kids, but, doing those kind of things. He makes a 20-minute short called The Valley, which was inspired by Harryhausen and was actually screened on New Zealand children's television. So he's 15 years old at this point. So obviously he's already, knows what he wants to do and is garnering some acclaim for it. And I think, it's very fascinating when we talk about these filmmakers who come up because, for every Peter Jackson, there is 20 other kids who did exactly the same thing who never made it, right? There's a very, there's a time and a place aspect of this too, right? Like we talked about, he is coming from a place that isn't known for film, but also that makes it easier, right, for him to break through at these points. But he's taking advantage of these opportunities, right?
Well, just the fact that you could get on a TV show in New Zealand with your 15-year-old, your 20-minute monster movie that you made as a 15-year-old with your buddies and get that shown on national television. I know it's not a big country, but, that's still national television. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. He goes to college, but, he ends up dropping out when he's 16, I guess, in college, which is New Zealand, I guess. And I
didn't really get that either, but that's the age he dropped out.
Yeah, to take a job to earn money, and he buys even that point a 25-year-old 16 millimeter camera, right, to start filming what will become Bad Taste, originally called Roast of the Day.
Bolex. You ever shoot on a 16 millimeter Bolex?
I've never shot on film in my life.
Really? No. I just caught the very tail end of that in film school. So we had them, we learned how to use them. We never used them again, but I think I shot on the exact same camera that he did.
Interesting.
With Bad Taste, and
had
less good results with it.
It was meant to be a 10-minute short film, but a friend of his, Ken Hammond, helped him develop it into a longer story. And, he told his friends that they would only be a 6-week long production. Ends up taking 4 years to make the movie. And most of the original funding for the movie was raised by, Jackson himself, the $25,000 budget. He gets some from the New Zealand Film Commission, about $5,000, ended up finishing the movie off. Like I said, he largely shot around his hometown of Pukerua Bay in Wellington, with a cast made of mostly of his friends. If you look at the cast list of this thing, it's so interesting because it's not like a Sam Raimi situation where it's like, okay, in this movie, I found my guy, and this guy will be in like all of my movies. That doesn't really happen until Brain Dead. Jed Brophy kind of becomes that guy a little bit for him. But in this point, it's just, there is one guy in this who ends up being in a bunch of his stuff, but never as like a big part in any of it, just sort of like as a side player. Most people, this is the only thing they've ever done. If you look at their IMDb credits, it's just this thing. Including like that old guy who's like the head of the aliens or whatever. Like,
who was very good, who died during production.
Did he die during production? That's the only thing he ever did, though, was this thing. The voice is
dubbed, yeah. The impression that I got, the story behind the story, just kind of researching this, it kind of sounds like this wasn't a real fun thing to be doing. He kind of made people go out on weekends and, covered them in fake blood and gross stuff. Like, it wasn't an enjoyable, like, hey, let's keep doing this. This is a really good time. It's like, all right, fine, Peter, let's go out and make more of your goddamn movie, whatever. Like, I kind of got the impression that was it. And so they supported him, but they weren't so supportive that they were like, okay, when this is done, we're done.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you would imagine so, right? Being, I think anybody,
I would have stuck by him. I would have been Peter Jackson's ride or die. I was born a different place, a different time.
Anybody who is friends with someone like that, and includes probably you and I are friends, definitely get probably a little bit exasperated with the like, hey, can you just like take a bunch of your time that you have and do this thing for me, if they're not really into filmmaking, which a lot of people obviously probably weren't, there's obviously the crazy thing about this too, right, is that there's no sync sound for the camera. So everything is shot without sound, and all the sounds you hear is added later, which is pretty crazy when you actually watch the movie, because there are a few moments where you're like, oh, obviously this is like dubbed over. But most of the movie, you can't really tell, which I think is pretty impressive.
Good dubbing, absolutely. Yeah. I've definitely seen worse.
I've seen worse in like high budget movies.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you watch any Italian horror or anything like that, I mean, they dub everything. So even some of the really good ones, the Dario Argento movies and stuff like that, it's real obvious that they're doing it. Yeah, it sounds pretty good here. And the sound effects work, and the sound design is surprisingly advanced for the little boy that he was making this movie. So
which is just
definitely
really
impressive there.
Yeah.
Built a lot of the special effects work stuff himself. The monster masks in this, he baked in his mom's oven. He made weapons. He built guns out of aluminum scraps and things like that. There's so much automatic weapons fire in this movie. It's like a Die Hard movie or something like that. And like, a lot of it looks pretty good, and it's literally just him. This was a technique that he developed when he was a little kid, where he's poking holes in the film, to simulate like a muzzle flash, which, if you've ever done, like I've done like After Effects, now it's so easy to do a muzzle flash, and it's literally one frame. So it's not, a thing that is, you have to like animate it like a lightsaber or something like that. And he just kind of figured out this way to do it. And in that documentary, there's a clip of this like cute little World War II movie he made as an 8-year-old, where a guy's firing a Gatling gun. He made a Gatling gun, and literally it's got muzzle flashes. Like it looks really good, except the grizzled World War II soldier sitting behind the gun is 8 years old.
Yeah, right.
I really admire the creativity, kind of right away.
I mean, so let's talk about the movie itself. I guess, for me, and I want to get your take on this, Nick. To me, talking about this movie is a lot less talking about it as a movie and more talking about it as what are the things that are here that will eventually become the things that become his hallmarks, right? Because, I think as an effort, right, it's incredibly impressive, right, for what he's doing, right? This, like you mentioned, the effects, the scale, like, I'll keep drawing comparisons to Evil Dead in many ways, which Evil Dead is a much better movie than this, right? Evil Dead is a movie. It's a fully featured movie that has
a coherent story, not a brilliant story, but a coherent fully realized story, sure.
And is a much more contained story, right? You can tell Raimi is like, these are the assets I have at my disposal. This is how I can shoot this thing over years and make it seem like it's all happening at the same time. And I can control these things, right? I can 20-somethings in a cabin with some really good effects. I can do this, right? Jackson doesn't seem to have any of that, like, sort of, regulation to what he's trying to do here. This thing is huge. It's epic. It's got like 5 different storylines happening at once, happening in different locations, and he's managing all of those things at the same times. And these are things that are very impressive, right? Even when the things don't necessarily work great all the time, or are not coherent, it's very impressive to see, like, okay, no, there is like 2 guys doing this over here, 1 guy over here doing this, 1 guy over here doing this, 1 guy over here doing this, and they're all different setups, they're all different locations, they're all different. Each person has their own sort of like mission or action that they are going into, right?
You're maybe giving it a little too much credit narrative-wise. It's a lot of, like basically one of his collaborators on this said we never had a script. Like, I'm credited, Ken Hammond, I think it was.
Ken Hammond.
I'm credited as like story, co-story or something like that. But that's all we had. And Peter Jackson would just come up with stuff every week. And it's like, okay, we're going to shoot this now. And a lot of it really does feel like that. Like, the central concept of this movie doesn't really get introduced till like an hour into it.
No.
90 minutes long, which is crazy. I mean, usually these things are 72 minutes at best. I thought this was. I remember it being much shorter and slower.
I want to be clear about something. I'm not saying that these are, when I say like have their own stories, I'm not saying like they're stories, the fact that they have like arcs and all this kind of stuff. I'm saying like
stuff that happens in a sequence.
Exactly.
Sure. Yeah.
And they all have different stuff happening until the end where they kind of come together, right, into this one giant crazy set piece thing that happens.
Sort of, yeah.
I'm saying all the characters are sort of in the same place, not the story comes together, all right? Because the whole reason I'm saying this, right, is because I think like you're talking about the length. The movie's way too long for there's not enough there for it to be an hour and a half long. It should be 70 minutes long, right?
You didn't think there should be another 10 minutes of people shooting machine guns at each other? Yeah.
But this is what I'm saying is that
driving around New Zealand?
I think a movie made for $25,000 over 4 years or whatever, right? This is not a movie that's meant to show off storytelling chops, right? It's a movie that's meant to go like, look what I can do for this little amount of money. Imagine if you gave me just a little bit more money, right? Imagine what I could do, right? And I think in that way, it's a tremendous calling card for him because even with all of these limitations, right? And I think like a lot of these early no budget movies, right? They all suffer from this idea where it's like, it doesn't feel like the world existed before the camera started rolling, right? And that's the only thing you know is what happened when the cameras started rolling, and when they stop rolling, the world ends, right? That's kind of how you feel, and you have no context for what's happening or what's going on or anything like that. But like, I think like it has style everywhere in it,
It's got a lot of personality.
Yes.
I mean, it's a movie, even the characters, I mean, they're not well-developed characters, but they're fun in a lot of ways, very comic booky, kind of over the top. It's very quippy. It's definitely a comedy, right? I mean,
yes,
it's,
100%.
Sometimes it kind of looks like a Lucio Fulci zombie movie, or it looks like a low-budget action movie, but what it is more than anything, and it's not that funny of a comedy either, but it's certainly going for some jokes, and it really, it's often described as a splatter comedy, and certainly it's got gore effects that are not beautiful. They're not the most realistic, but also they're crazy over the top. They're really creative. What he does with like chicken parts and stuff in this movie is just kind of insane. And so, like you mentioned it as a calling card, it certainly is. And you could definitely see him directing a tighter, more coherent script that has these kind of splatter moments and these he does it in Dead Alive. It's I kick ass for the Lord. We see kind of a prototypical version of that here. I'm a Derek. Derek's don't run.
Derek's don't run. This is what, this is kind of, again, to bring it back to the Raimi thing, it's sort of like the Evil Dead to Evil Dead 2 thing, where it feels like Evil Dead 2 is like, no, this is the movie I actually wanted the first one to be, but I couldn't do all this stuff, and now I can do all this stuff, so I'm just going to do it, right? And that's what it sort of, now that seeing this for the first time and having seen Brain Dead, that's what it feels like to me, right? Where he's like, I got this idea, and like I just kind of work out like what I want it to be. Because I do think Brain Dead, as far as I remember, is actually, a pretty funny horror comedy, right? And
yeah, sure.
And it is decently coherent for how crazy it is, right? This thing is just like you said, like, let's just do a bunch of setups, and I do think that it's not consistently funny, but there are times where it is pretty funny. Like at times there's some lines and stuff like that I think are really good, and just some concepts, right, that I think are funny, especially in like the physical comedy. I think he does a really good job with that. Like there's an early sort of like when all the sledgehammer guys come running up.
I love that shot. Yeah.
But there's a moment where all these guys, all the alien guys who are just dudes wearing like blue like button-up shirts who are like really
that's their
athletic.
Human form.
Yes, but really athletic, but really stupid is like kind of how they come across. And they're being sent. They realize that this guy Derek is on top of this mountain, right? And they're
played by Peter Jackson.
Right? No, Derek is Derek. Wait, no. Which one is what's the guy? Like the human guy who gets thrown down the mountain. What's his name?
Isn't that Derek? Like the guy hanging off the mountain and Derek who fights him. They're both Peter Jackson, aren't they?
Is really?
I think so.
That is absolutely could be true. He did a good job wearing a lot of like other stuff on his face, so maybe absolutely.
Well, a lot of people are playing more than one character here.
Yes, I know.
We don't really. There's not a lot of characters.
Oh yeah, he is playing Derek as well. So yeah, Peter Jackson.
Yeah, I thought you were going to talk about. There's this great shot where they like hands out sledgehammers.
Well,
to all the rest
that's what I'm talking about. So
isn't that great?
They're all grabbing these big, huge hammers, and then the last guy has to take like this little tiny. It's not even like a normal size hammer. It's like a little tiny hammer, like a ball peen hammer,
like a watch hammer. Yeah,
like a watch hammer. He has to take. Just a good psych gag. And then when they get up there, they're having like the little fight that happens up there. It's like Looney Tunes as hell,
great.
Right?
But gross. It's like real gross Looney Tunes. Yeah. When there's Uzis. This movie has Uzis, which is awesome. He like shoots a hole through one guy and then sticks the Uzi through the hole and like uses him as a human shield as he's firing the gun through it. Like that's fun. That's some real teenage boy shit, and I enjoy it a lot.
Yeah. But even before that, when they're like he's like running away from like trying to kind of like giving the rope-a-dope around the fence and how he's like ducking and they're hitting each other with the sledgehammers, and stuff like that. And the sledgehammer are hitting each other. It's all very like Looney Tunes-esque, like how the action is.
And this reminded me a lot of like Buster Keaton or something. They're fighting like on the edge of a cliff. And like literally I'm thinking like these guys could have died very easily. Or like there's no safety coordinator. There's no stunt person on set, like setting up a mattress down below or something. It's like, holy shit, that looks really dangerous. And it looks really good.
It does look really good. So
probably a lot of camera trickery and angles and stuff like that. But I mean, he really sells it. Yeah. And I think there was a lot of actual physical danger too.
I absolutely guarantee there was a lot of physical danger. So I guess we should just say the kind of plot of this movie, right, is that these aliens have like invaded this town. They look like humans.
Yeah. Do we know at the beginning that they're aliens?
No, not really, but like you get some of that from like the dialogue between Derek and the other guy when they're like, get off my planet or whatever they say to him or whatever.
Yeah, I guess. Sorry, because they don't take on their alien form till later because I guess they just didn't have the masks yet or something.
No.
So they are disguised as human. It's like a body snatchers thing. There's a town, a small town, like what's that? Kaihoro, I think, which is not a real place, which I don't know enough about New Zealand. I would have just believed it. But there's also a great road sign for Kaihoro and Castle Rock because, you got to kiss the ring, Stephen King. If you're a filmmaker of this era. And there's a town that has been wiped out or it's empty, right? There's no people there.
Yeah.
So I guess the aliens have taken over their bodies or something. And
well, no, they're in ball and boxes. They all killed them, and they're all in boxes.
That's right. Sorry. Yes, but the aliens have taken their form. I think that's why there's like when we see them all, it's like a bunch of old ladies. Even though in the action scenes, it's just a bunch of dudes Peter Jackson's age.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is fun.
And they this like I guess crew of agents. You don't really get an idea what they are. This is what I'm talking about.
Everything describes them as like a paramilitary squad.
Yeah,
they are
the
like
boys because there's that great thing in the beginning.
Exactly. Yep. There is that's a good sight gag too, right? The phone, the official phone in the New Zealand, the president or the prime minister or whatever is kind of going down through the list, and there's the boys, and it's these guys who have guns and fight stuff.
Yeah,
for
they're
the government
to fight the aliens. And that's basically the story, right? They're there to fight the aliens, and a bunch of stuff happens. That's really what happens in the movie. And so, this scene where they're up on top of the mountain, what I think is just to talk about his ability to kind of like visually communicate information as a filmmaker. We see the danger of that cliff before that fight, right? When he's sort of like torturing the guy or whatever, the himself, basically, the alien that he's captured. He nearly falls, right? You get this moment where he almost falls, and you just see him, like, you see this great shot of, like, him on the edge of the cliff, basically nothing. If he falls, he's just going to die, basically is what it looks like. So when we get to that moment where he's fighting those guys, you have that information in your head, right, of, like, okay, like, this is a really dangerous spot, so there's going to be something that's going to happen here where someone's going to fall or something. And, that's already communicating stuff that many filmmakers at this age would not be communicating and setting up this early, as well as just this idea of like, the space right between where Derek is and where his like buddy is down in the town. Obviously it's the real space probably that's between those two things, but he shoots that stuff to really show you like the space between them and where one of them is, where one of them others is, which I'm talking about. Like, that's what I meant at the beginning about like mapping out where these characters are in different spots. That's not easy to do, especially as a first time filmmaker. Like, that's why you see most first films are like, everybody get into a house, and we're all just going to be in dialogue scenes until something crazy happens, right? Like that's
he wants to do these like big scale. I mean, they're small scale in the sense that there's not a lot of people involved, but they're big scale action sequences in that it's wide open spaces. You're right? Like I believe it's Derek who's up on the top of a mountain with binoculars. Barry, the other guy with the long hair,
I liked Barry.
I liked Barry a lot
as, like a screen presence. Like it was just like, interesting. Like. Yep. You're just kind of like, oh, I'm just here. Like a good thing about him.
This very low key, kind of chill guy, long hair, balding, not a movie star, handsome guy. And he kills one of the aliens down on the beach. This incredible special effect where he blows off half of his head, and literally you've got the bottom half is intact, the top half is gone, and there's blood and stuff squirting out of it. It's amazing looking. Yeah. It's really, I mean, I've seen so many low budget gore movies made on bigger budgets than this. And they don't look nearly as good. It's in a really, really great practical effect there. Yeah. But it's this scene where you've got the observer up on the mountain looking down at the other guy down below and communicating to him via these radios, these ridiculous looking like police radios they have with like wire, it looks like a dental headgear thing on all of their heads. Just, fun improvised stuff like that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there's real scope to this, right? I mean, he's literally, dealing with these characters. I didn't know exactly how they're communicating at first, how he was seeing what he was seeing. He's like, oh, I thought you were left-handed when he pulls out the gun with the right hand or whatever. But, then we actually see how he's doing that. And that all is sort of set up and established also. And it's just a really fun scene. Like it's funny, but there's tension. It's not just like, here's some gore, like, let's get to the money shot real quick. But it's, he actually builds a little chase sequence out of it. And then he kind of does that again, like over and over and over through this. So like, if it was just gore galore for the sake of nothing but that, it would get tired really quickly. But, I find it weirdly sort of compelling and endearing. I care about these characters. I'm glad. Like, none of them die. They all kind of make it through this pretty well. And Derek gets fucked up pretty bad, which we'll talk about. But, I'm happy they all, I'm rooting for him.
Yeah, I think I think the first 25 or so minutes of this, I think, is exactly what we're talking about. Very strong, very propulsive. You're like kind of like, okay, like I don't really know what's going on. It's all kind of crazy, but I'm into these little set pieces he's putting together. Like I like when Barry runs into that shed and he's hiding, and then he tries to come out and kill the alien, but he's like his shirt got stuck on the hook on the back of the thing, and he's like, and he can't do it. And then he's like, oh, God damn it. Like, I'm like, and then that's when it gets distracted by, Derek torturing the alien that he's got trapped up there by stabbing him in the foot, which is a very, like, clever way to have him playing both roles, where you don't ever see, both Peter Jackson's faces in the same frame at the same time, and I thought that was very clever. And like we talked about that fight up on the hill. At this point, Derek falls, right? And you think he's dead because he like crumples into a half or whatever, the dummy stuff. Lots of use of dummies in this for,
good dummies too.
Good dummies, yeah.
I've seen way worse dummies in way more expensive movies. Die Hard 2, one of my favorite, once I never noticed it. I watched that movie a lot. I love that series. There's when the scaffolding falls on the guy in the new wing of the airport. Yeah. And it's like the most obvious rubber dummy person you've ever seen in your life in a set of coveralls. And they had all the money in the world to make that movie. And it looks like shit. And this looks like legitimately good. Yeah. There were a couple of dummy falls in this movie where I was like, did he just throw someone off a cliff?
Yeah. And he miraculously survives, except his skull is cracked open.
This is such a good running gag. It's such a great running gag.
It's disgusting. And he finds, like I said, he finds like one of his testicles or whatever on the ground. He picks it up and shoves it into the hole in his brain.
Is that what that is?
It looks like a testicle to me, man. Like,
I've never seen a raw testicle. I thought it was a piece of brain, right?
I guess it could be a piece of brain.
He's got this fragment of his skull that's kind of hanging off. And if he doesn't like stick it back on, he has like horrible seizures. It's pretty gross.
It is really gross.
So he gets this, I thought it was just a piece of chicken or something that was supposed to be a piece of brain.
Maybe it was.
He like haphazardly sticks it back in and kind of like sticks the piece of his skull back on, and then he's pretty much good.
He takes a belt and ties it around his head
later. That's gross too. Yep.
Yeah, and he also he wears a top hat for part.
Yeah, to kind of keep it down. Yeah, and it gets it keeps flopping down. He has a seizure. It gets like dirty, like on the ground, and it gets like covered in straw and dirt and crap, like every time more and more when he does it. Yeah. And by the end of the movie, it's just like more crud than body parts. Yeah. It's a fun idea. It's really gross.
At one point, one part of his brain falls out and he steps on it by accident.
So he puts a piece of somebody else's in it.
An alien brain in his head. Yes, absolutely. Derek has a good storyline. I'll say Derek has a very clear path through this movie. And then he drives that van with the whole like the Beatles standees or whatever as like passengers or whatever. It's so weird. Such a weird idea.
It's great though, because it's all these shots where like the car is just like rushing toward the camera and it's just the Beatles just smiling like idiotically in the front seat. Awesome.
Yeah. And we also have these two other guys, right, who are like the other members of the boys or whatever.
These are the cool guys. These are like the good looking, like badass members of the team. Yeah.
Yeah. These are the action hero dudes or whatever of the. And then there's this other guy who is like, I think he's like sort of like a scammer. Like he's coming to collect this like.
No, I thought he was legitimate. Like there's this charity and you put money in an envelope outside your house. Like they notify you. Yeah, but then at
one point he takes like a flyer and like turns it into a bag. So it looks like he's I think there's some scammy thing going on with what he's doing.
Oh, I bought it. I would have given him money.
Yeah. So and he's going by and picking.
Very gullible.
He shows up. They know he's coming. They're like, there's somebody from the council coming to.
Well, because they see the flyers, right?
Yeah,
it's he'll be here in 3 days, so get your money ready for him, or whatever. So he shows up. And that was the movie, by the way. I just before we go too much further.
Notes, yeah.
Jackson's original idea was just, this was going to be like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre thing. It's this guy, he comes to this town and he finds, cannibals there and they eat him. And that's the end of the movie. That was the short. And that becomes one of, what you call it, like 5 or 6 subplots all kind of happening at once. Yeah. That's one of them. It's, it could be 6 different movies and that's one thread that it follows. Yeah. He eventually meets up with the boys and they save him and, he kind of becomes part of the team.
They see him get kidnapped, so they're like, oh, we got to save this guy. They got to give some sort of like, he's trying to force a connection between the disparate things.
Yeah, it's very Saving Private Ryan. Like, why? Like, why is he so important? Everybody else is dead.
Yeah.
I guess just so they can say, like, I saved someone.
Which leads to this, like...
government efficiency.
Really great. So we get, I guess, it's tough. I don't really know if we should go by it beat by beat, but there's any sequences you want to talk about in particular. I do want to talk about where so this guy ends up at this house where like it's like the alien headquarters. It's like this nice house right? And all of the aliens are there and they're going to eat him, right? It's like they're going to throw. It's just this funny thing where it's like, again, you can tell it's like multiple stories that are just being smashed together because you're like, you haven't eaten any of the other people. You've just killed them. Why have you just killed all the other people? And why are you going to cook this guy and eat him?
Well, I think because they have enough. So that's what I was saying, right? Like the concept, the real concept of this movie, the reason why it's called Bad Taste is not, it's a pun, right? It's a movie in bad taste.
Yes,
but literally the plot of this is these aliens have come to Earth because they are a fast food company in space somewhere on their home planet or whatever. And they want to make human meat into their whatever. Did they even say what they're going to do with it? Or
no, I think it's like we found a new product. Basically, we're gonna win the market because we found a new product it's gonna be all the rage with our people.
Crumb's Crunchy Delights is the name of the company. The head of it is called Lord Crumb, who's the old man that we see. He's kind of the main villain. Yeah, and so we learn that about an hour in that not only do they eat humans, but like that is the whole thing. So like that's a fun concept, but like really you see it in that one scene, and that's the only time where it's relevant at all. The fast food thing?
Yes, absolutely. It's the only time. Yeah. Because honestly, like everything else in the movie has nothing to do with it. They barely mention it at all. It's not something they talk about, No,
there's not a lot of, I mean, as gross as this movie is, there's not a lot of cannibalism in it. I don't think there's really any,
there's like
right?
None.
Like, do they ever eat humans? They shoot machine guns at each other alive.
Yeah.
In their final like alien form with the masks and everything, it's really just an action movie for a lot of this.
It is. It felt like when they were doing the thing at the estate at the end, it felt like I was watching like Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
Like that's what it felt like.
I don't know about that. I mean, that's a big budget movie. Like a cheap 80s, like shot in the Philippines action movie where like a dude with a machine gun just mows people down.
But I just mean like in like size of scope what he's trying to do. There's just so many people, or like the end of like Beverly Hills Cop, where there are like the huge mansion fight at the end of Beverly Hills Cop or whatever. Like that's what it feels like in like what he's trying to do. Like this huge size thing with all of these people shooting guns.
Yeah, Commando.
Whatever it is.
And
exactly. And it's just it's crazy that's what. If you had given me a million guesses about what the ending of this movie would have been, where I saw it would not be that. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, it does. Like it circles back. The house is a spaceship and it takes off, and that's great. That's the climax. Yeah, it's great.
Which that effect, it's one of those times which I love when this happens when I watch a movie, especially knowing what the budget of this movie was. I'm like, how the fuck did he do this?
Yeah.
What is this? This is it must be a model, obviously, but it's a fantastic model.
There's a couple of moments. There's earlier in this, there's a guy who's cut in half. He gets hit by a car and cut in half, and his intestines are hanging out. It's one of the best. I mean, I've seen that effect before. George Romero has done that frequently, but like it looks as good as I've seen it anywhere here. Like I'm watching it, and it's not a great print of this movie that I watched, but I was like, how the hell? I know probably half of him is buried underground or something, but then he flops back and you see the cavity just kind of wide open, and the guy's, it's literally still the guy. It's not like a dummy. There's no cut to a dummy. And I'm like, that's incredible.
Yeah. There's just a lot of ingenuity in this movie right about how you do it. Because like, even when he makes the house take off as a spaceship, he does a really smart thing where he's got like these trees in the foreground. So it doesn't look like a model. It looks like a house, and it looks like it's actually going high into the sky because these trees seem like they're really tall, and it's like getting over the top of these trees. It's just a really smart, way to do it. And like I said, a really great model that I guess because of how tight he's shooting it, you don't have to worry so much about how the scale is going to play, right? Compared to other things. You're not trying to do like this like crazy like long wide shot of it, right? It's very like a medium close up of the house, but still super impressive and how they did it, And like I said, I asked myself, how did he do this? Like this must have taken so long to do this one thing, right? And it's just this crazy, ridiculous thing that happens at the end of the movie. But I do want to rewind a little bit. Like, so the boys have gone to the house, right? And they've sort of like broken in, and there's some great moments there. They rip this guy's fucking head off with his spine, and then break the spine off.
Like years before Mortal Kombat, we get the spine ripping thing.
Yeah, and he breaks the spine off, and then one guy kicks the head out of the window, and he goes, "The magic's still there," like remembering his glory days as an athlete or whatever, which I think is hilarious. Barry's he starts mopping the floor when they walk in or whatever, like
this scene, I think we've given a lot of praise to this movie. Yeah. I have no idea what's happening here, right? They sneak into the house. They're there in some room upstairs. All the aliens are there too. How they don't cross paths until they need to makes no sense at all. And then like they stay the night for some reason, and then like stuff happens the next morning.
Yeah, this whole part of the movie is very squishy with plot.
Very squishy is a great way to describe it.
But this one scene I thought was actually one of the funnier scenes, because before that they do the synchronizing watches gag, which I just think is great. Because the one guy's not wearing a watch. The other guy has like a Princess Diana, Prince Charles watch on or whatever. It's just a great little thing. All the insert shots are really stylized, you know, and nice. But then the scene where they go and he kicks the head out the window and he's cleaning up the floor. I just thought he picks up the mop and he's cleaning up the floor for some reason.
Yeah.
And then he gets angry when there's more blood on the ground. He's like, I just cleaned this up. And then he just keeps doing it. And the one guy goes out and pretends, he takes the guy's shirt and he pretends like he's an alien. And this scene, I will give it credit, made me want to vomit. Because
this is gross. Yep. I didn't remember a lot about the movie. I remembered a couple of gags, and this was one of them because literally it made me gag.
The Peter Jackson bag, not the Derek, the Peter Jackson alien, vomits into a bowl, all this green shit. And it's such a long vomit.
Yeah,
it's
that would be
crazy.
bad enough by itself. Yep.
Yeah, crazy. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so gross. And then the head alien drinks it, and he has one of these, again, the movie is not hilarious, but when he goes like, "Ooh, lucky boy, I got a crunchy bit," or whatever he says, which is such a great line. And then they're all drinking it, and then the human guy has to drink it, and for whatever reason, it's that like weird things that movies can do with you where they impose a reality on you. Where I'm like, well, the aliens are drinking it, that's gross, but like not a big deal. But when the human guy had to drink it, I literally could barely watch it. I was like, I cannot handle this right now. And
it's really disgusting. It's
so gross.
You know, it's obviously not anything gross.
No,
you know,
like
he just
bright
made it
green. It's
Jello and whatever. Yeah, muesli. I think they said he used, and you know, it's all edible stuff. But in the moment, it is chunky and thick, and just it's exactly what it needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Like in little gags like that, I love in the movie. And if the movie had been, like I said, shorter and just like those kind of bits, I think I would have been like, you know what, really fun, solid first movie.
Did you catch, by the way, sorry, before we move on from the puke scene, I want to talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whichever character, the one who eats the puke, he goes back upstairs and, you know, he's like, I can't believe I had to do that. And one of the other guys is like giving him shit about it. Like, what'd you have to do? Eat some chud? What? There's like a
Chuck.
word.
I think he said Chuck.
Is it Chuck? Okay.
Yeah, like up Chuck.
Okay. All right.
I think that's what he was saying.
I love the line delivery.
Of that line is like, oh, we know exactly what you had to do. You know, like that's like the joke of it. You know, like it seems so crazy.
I just really like the way he says it, although I just didn't catch the word. I was wondering, okay, I can sleep well now knowing it's Chuck.
Yeah, and they're like individual little shots that are just great. Like when we first see the sort of councilman who has been taken, when he's in like that little pot with all the vegetables around him or whatever, and he, you know, I think that's a really fun shot.
You know, it's your cannibal movie thing, right? Like Peter Jackson, he loves those things. He loves King Kong. He loves those wandering, explorers detained by cannibal tribes and fighting their way out of the jungle kinds of things.
Yeah. So, you know, they rescue this guy eventually, and they kind of do this thing where like, hey, we got to get you out of here. Right. And so they're like getting him out of there. Right. And then one by one, they're all like, you know what? We got to go back or whatever. So they go back. And again, I go, how did he do this? Was the fucking bazooka to the car thing. I was like, how did you
blew up a car. I think they did it because he actually did it.
Yeah. You can tell because the shot changes to like this very wide shot that obviously is zoomed in because they had to get really far away from the car. But still, they blew up a car. And even the bazooka effect is really good. When he shoots the missile looks great. The missile looks great. It's moving in a realistic way. You know, like all that stuff is really cool and really well done. And I really like that a lot. And, you know, I would say when they're in the house, when they go back to the house and Derek gets back into the fray, that's some of my favorite shit in the whole movie. When he like kills the guy through the wall or whatever, when the guy thinks he's about to die, and then all of a sudden like he cuts the guy in half through the wall with the chainsaw.
That's a great gag. Yeah, there's like
so
chainsaws.
Good.
We got chainsaws, bazookas. We're blowing up sheep. I mean, he really does. It is, you know,
the sheep.
The sheep is really funny. I guess that was supposed to be a running gag, but they could only do it once, so they do it once, and it's great.
Fucking funny. Yep. That was great. The stuff I don't like is like there's just too much gun shooting. There's too many people running around shooting guns, and I'm like, Peter, come on, let's just go through this up. This is the least interesting
there's
stuff.
Like we see that you can do that. We've had some pretty fun shootout sequences, but there's a lot of moments where like, you know, I'm shooting from here and the other guy's shooting from there, and then the other guy comes up behind him, and you know the body drops. Like, all right. See that once. That's a good gag. You don't need to do it multiple times. Yeah, this could have been a 72-minute movie. I think it would have been better that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I guess, that's production value. That's just him showing, hey, like,
Absolutely.
I'm going to just put it all on the screen here, and
Yeah.
you can fast forward if you don't like it.
Yeah, like I'm not like I think he's explicitly being like I'm not just a guy who makes a gnarly locked room horror movie, right? That's not what I'm. That is not my ambition.
And I
here.
remembered it was a long time ago that I saw this, probably 2001, right? And it might have been a little before that because Fun Stuff Video, as I mentioned before. But like I remember this being a little bit slower. Like I thought it was like, okay, here's like a cool action scene and a good gag, and then characters just kind of talking back and forth, which is what most of these no budget movies are. You have kind of your exploitation moments, and a lot of the great exploitation movies are that too. Like here's the stuff you put in the trailer, and the rest of it's just like people shooting the shit in a room, or cops driving to the crime scene and it takes them forever to get there. This movie's actually not that. I mean, there is a lot of driving sequences, but they're actually fun, kinetic, interesting driving sequences, and there's like almost no sitting around talking. It's a lot of just shooting and kung fu and all kinds of stuff that he will do better later. But you can kind of, as I said before, really see just prototypical examples of what the Peter Jackson action style is going to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even the, like he loves doing these like crazy close-ups, and that's even here in this, right? These like shots of just like a single character in frame really close on their face reacting to something crazy happening, physically that's happening to them. That's in this, that'll be all the way through Lord of the Rings. We will see that kind of stuff happening here, and I think I think like I think the look of the aliens when they're like in full form is cool. I think it's so funny that you can just see their eyes normally behind the masks and all that kind of stuff. And I like that he kind of plays with that at the very end when Derek puts the face on, basically as a mask, and it just ends with him cackling about like going to get them or whatever. I think that was really good. I mean, I think it's a lot of fun. I do think that like, again, I think it's too long. I was like, oh, I must be almost done with this movie. And I was like, nope, it's 40 minutes in.
How are we going to do more?
Yeah, exactly. And obviously a lot happens, but are there any other like visual gags or sequences that we want to like dive into, or any like just like, I guess like cornerstones that we're seeing here, that we think are going to show up later on in his work? I guess.
Well, I definitely think the creature effects. I mean, we haven't talked. You were just mentioning the masks.
Yeah.
You can definitely see the orcs from Lord of the Rings in this, and you can see, the Harryhausen stuff. Like he doesn't do a lot of stop motion here or anything like that, but these monsters, these like humanoid monsters, you get a lot of that, and Lord of the Rings kind of takes that to the nth degree as well. I guess you could say this is a movie about fellowship. It's coming together and fighting some evil, and it's the brotherhood and the camaraderie and stuff. We kind of see that in the boys. I mean, these are his friends. They obviously were all friends. There's a lot of it's not a lot of sitting around and talking, but they're kind of quipping back and forth, and they all have the action hero thing where even in it's like what the Avengers does, right? It's
absolutely,
maybe not quite as good as that, but it's very quippy, it's very witty, kind of back and forth repartee and stuff while they're in grave mortal danger and killing things and almost getting killed themselves. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's less interesting to talk about, this happens and this happens and that happens.
Yeah,
just the thought that all of this sort of comes together at the end of the film. And like I said, it's we're blowing up cars with bazookas, we're chainsawing through walls. The house takes off like a spaceship.
Yeah.
It's
and
like
then flies through space, by the way. You see it flying through space.
The climax of this takes place in space. Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot all about that too. That's awesome.
Yeah. Again, the ambition is just nutso, right? Yep. In this whole thing. There's that great line too where he's like, we're licensed to protect the Earth from invaders and the moon. Don't forget about the moon. I thought that was a fun line as well. But even like these little micro mini gags within these bigger sequences, I think are really fun too. Like that opening, not the opening sequence, but the sequence of Derek fighting off those five sledgehammer guys.
Oh, I love it. You get an incredible moment where there's a sledgehammer involved. One guy gets swings the sledgehammer wildly, hits the other guy in the head. It gets lodged in his head. And then Derek blows off the arm that's holding the sledgehammer. So the other guy's walking around with a sledgehammer sticking out of his head with a severed arm on the other end of it. I mean, come on. This guy's going on to bigger things. You had to see it. You had to know at the time.
But there's also, even within the mini thing with that, when Derek's trying to reload his Uzi or whatever, and he's like, but he also has to like hold on to that one tuft of grass, and he like flips the Uzi over, and he like puts it down, and he like he puts the clip in upside down and he has to like
very like
hammer it in.
Indiana Jonesy kind of moment, you know, like this resourceful John McClane sort of thing. I mean, Peter Jackson, I don't know if he's known as the action filmmaker, you know, he's the epic fantasy guy or the horror guy, but the horror comedy guy. But, you know, he kind of knows how to do, like I said, those like Buster Keaton-y sort of, you know, action set pieces. And those, it's full of those little moments of personality and just fun stuff like that. And also, you know, the whole time they're, as we said before, on the side of this cliff looking like they're going to fall off. You know, there is real peril there. It really works.
Absolutely. I mean, and obviously knowing that, like, I guess Peter's putting himself in that danger, you know, pretty primarily.
Well, his friends too. No, he put some other people in.
He's the one mostly hanging off the cliff. You know what I mean?
True.
And I'm sure it probably was like, Peter, you're doing it. We're not hanging off this cliff. Are you crazy?
Well, I'm glad he didn't die making this movie. Like, it would be sad if he made it and died halfway through production. Somebody else finished it. Like, I'm glad the story ended the way it or is continuing the way it is. Because you could have easily seen it go the other way, I think. Yeah,
absolutely. But yeah, and just like to make something you said, like in the car, like there's that one point where like they're driving, the guys are chasing them and they're driving by and he shoots one of them as they're driving and the guy like flies back. And the camera doesn't cut. It like shows him flying back and then comes back into the car again. Like that again, it's one of these things where, you know, when you don't have, you know, a team of skilled professionals surrounding you to do this stuff, like in big budget movies, you have people whose only job ever in their lives was to master doing dynamic, like steady cam shots like that. Right.
Yep.
This is Peter Jackson making his own weighted steady cam rig.
$15
and doing it himself, you know? So, and especially if you've ever tried to make a movie when you were that young, you know, it's like there's a lot of stuff you want to do that you just don't have the ability yet or the knowledge or like the muscle memory to be able to pull off, right? So they end up looking cheap or they end up looking, you know, you end up just doing a bad job of it, right?
Well, you hit the nail right on the head, right? Like what I love, capital L love about bad taste is, you know, this is the ultimate version of that, like friends in the backyard with some plastic swords and a camcorder. You know, we all did. I'm sure you did that too.
Absolutely.
I did that, little vampire epic, you know, those types of things. And they always look like shit. And you look at them as an older person, and you're like, what was I thinking? But at the time, it's like, oh, you know, I got a kind of cool shot here. You know, that Nine Inch Nails song that I cut into the fight scene there, that kind of worked a little bit, that I would have never gotten the rights to. And like, this is that, like, taken as far as it can possibly go, right? Like, it's the ultimate version of that, like, let's put on a show, that like very charming, you know, little kid sort of thing that you do. You know, sometimes these things go somewhere, sometimes they don't. Did you ever see, there's a documentary about it, but these three kids from, I think, somewhere in the Midwest in America, they did a shot-for-shot remake of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
And they made a documentary about it when they were all like in their 20s and 30s, and none of them went into the film industry. None of them obviously became what Peter Jackson became, but they finished the fucking movie. You know, they loved Raiders of the Lost Ark, and they did their own version of it. Literally the giant boulder and, you know, everything they could possibly do. And, you know, this is that it's like the best version of that, the best way you could possibly do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. Yeah, it's such a fascinating film to kick off his filmography. And, you know, we talked about this before when we were off mic. We definitely talked about this, like, how long can we talk about a movie like Bad Taste? The answer is about an hour. I mean, you know, there's not much more to say about it, really.
I was going to try to contradict you there and be like, wait, but no, actually, I think you're right.
Yeah. So, you know, I think it's going to be fascinating, you know, next time we talk about Meet the Feebles, and what we can talk about there as well. A movie I've never seen. So, you know, I'm sure we'll have stuff to talk about, but.
Oh, I'm sure we will.
But yeah, I'm really excited about this series and kicking this off with somebody like this, especially because it starts like this, right? Because it starts in such, you know, it's not even like if we're doing Spielberg, right? It's not even like doing that, where it's like, yeah, his first movie is like still like a mid-budget studio movie. You know what I mean? It's not like he doesn't have this, right? That he did something like this when he was 12, and then
no. It's not so like, you know, Roger Corman was he made schlocky movies, made B movies, hired, you know, Jonathan Demme and Martin Scorsese, and like, so they got to cut their teeth like in this sort of smaller version of the studio system. And literally, this is not that. It wasn't, you know, he wasn't a student at the time. This wasn't like a college film,
right?
You know, John Carpenter made Dark Star as his student film, and then they, you know, got more budget and they kind of made it a feature, after he graduated. It's not any of those stories, right? This is literally just a guy having a good time, coming up with ideas, building a lot of stuff himself. I mean, he seems very humble in that it was never designed to be like, this is my calling card for Hollywood. It's like, I'm just going to make that. I really like movies. I want to show off what I can do. And like, I think, at least the stuff that I've seen and the stuff I've read, it's like, maybe he could have taken it or left it.
Yeah.
I made this movie. I had a good time. I tortured my friends for a while and people saw it and they laughed and I'm happy with that, and it really kind of feels like that. Like nothing in this movie screams out to me like, I want to make money in making movies.
Yeah. I mean, these first three movies, especially, it does not seem like he has any care about commerciality at all, right? It's not, in fact, it seems like almost, especially in this
Dead
movie.
Alive, maybe.
Dead Alive, maybe, but the first two seem like he's almost like, how far can I go? Like, you know what I mean?
Definitely that. Yeah, that's never going to be a blockbuster. Yeah. I did want to mention, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but there is an American analog, at least at this point in Peter Jackson's career, a guy named J.R. Bookwalter, who makes a movie when he's about 16, 17 years old, shoots on film. It's called The Dead Next Door, and it's basically a George Romero zombie movie made by, again, this precocious high school student. I think he's the same age as Peter Jackson, just, we don't go to college at 16 here,
right.
But literally kind of gets his friends and his family and his whole community together, shoots this movie. It's got some great gore effects. It's not as good as Bad Taste, but it's not so far afield from it. I think they're very similar in a lot. I need to see it again. But what he goes on to do is make like no budget direct to video stuff for like 10, 15 years, starts his own company and then kind of, it's basically disappeared for a long time since then. So that's another direction Peter Jackson could have gone in, but didn't go in, because J.R. Bookwalter was a big deal, right? When a kid makes a feature film, that's something. And, because horror fans like me tend to have, we'll accept a lot of things. Our taste is not always the best. We'll watch some 16-year-old's gory ass zombie ripoff of George Romero movie and say, hey, that guy's pretty good. Let me see what else he's going to do. I just kind of think it's interesting, like the ways that this career could have developed and the way that it actually did. Like it is kind of a one in a million thing. Yeah.
I mean, it feels somewhat like, God, what is that Edgar Wright first movie that he made? Oh God, what is it? A Fistful of Fingers or whatever the hell it's called,
Yeah.
It feels very much akin to that, right? Where you're like, this is not good. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's good, right? But there is just something about what this incredibly young person is doing that is just at a different level than other people of his age and even people who are older than him, right? That are doing this kind of thing. And that's what you can tell in this movie, right? There's no story sense or pacing sense yet. He doesn't have that yet, right?
No, but there's this love of movies. There's this love of cutting shots together in a fun way that's coherent and, has energy and dynamism to it. That is, he's speaking the language at this young age. And it's, you could just like every frame of this is like, he's having fun. He's having fun. Nobody else is having fun probably, but he's having a lot of fun. And you could just imagine him, like the Derek character is very kind of over the top. And I feel like that's Peter Jackson, like in the editing room, like, oh, this looks so cool, like it really has that vibe kind of all the way through it.
It's so funny because him in this movie is just like every cameo he has in every other movie that he is ever in, I
think that's him.
What? Just how he is? You mean his personality?
Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
I think that is Peter Jackson, if you met him today. And I feel like he is, he is ascended to, like I said, like the Mount Olympus of studio filmmakers. But like he seems like the kind of guy that will shoot the shit with a kid, young fan or something like that. And
yeah, he's always seemed like a pretty chill guy.
He is. He really seems to have that humility about him and just the love of it. Whereas like, I just want to share this, he's not that, he doesn't kind of put himself on that pedestal. And I like that about him too.
What you always hear about him is that like personally he's like a great, chill, fun guy, but on set he is a pain in the ass. That's like what I've always
I'm sure he was here.
Because we hear about story about Christopher Lee on like Lord of the Rings, and he's like they've done like 55 takes. And Peter's like, go get it. And he's like, Peter, I think I have it. I think it pissed people off. But yeah, I mean,
well, just the chutzpah to say that to a guy like Christopher Lee.
I know. He's got Christopher Lee
awesome.
and Ian McKellen in a scene together. And you're like, let's do it again, guys. You haven't quite nailed it yet.
Classically trained actors.
Yeah. But yeah, no, this movie's a ton of fun. I think, again, I think it's one of those, I think it's much more of a, wow, look at this, because you can see like the beginnings of a really interesting filmmaker rather than this is a really good movie. Like I said at the beginning, like I'll keep bringing it back to Evil Dead. I would tell people someone to watch Evil Dead regardless of why they wanted to watch it. But like, if you like horror movies, you should really watch the original Evil Dead. You know, I probably wouldn't say that about this movie. You know, I'd be like, but if you really want to learn a lot about Peter Jackson, watch this movie. You know, that's
or like a YouTube highlights reel.
Yeah.
You know, I hate to say that, right? Like, I don't like to, I mean, he put a lot of love and thought into everything in this movie, but, you know, a 15-minute clip compilation will probably give you everything you need for bad taste, and watch that documentary too, because that's a lot of fun as well. That's also on YouTube.
Absolutely. Just speaking of really fun horror stuff, and this will be way out of date by the time this episode drops, but I did see the number one movie in America at the time of recording this, Final Destination Bloodlines, in the IMAX this past weekend, and it ruled so hard. It is, I think, the best of those movies, and it's just one of those things where just, you know, relating to this movie and a thing where it's like, that movie knows, and all the best in the series know exactly what movie it is, and they know exactly the kind of like line between, wow, this is effed up, and wow, isn't this so freaking ridiculous? It's hilarious. You know, we saw a packed theater with my wife, and people were laughing out loud as much as they were like squirming in their seats. And there, you know, just one time where you're sitting there and you're like, you know, I know something is going to happen, right? And they give you like 3 fake outs before the thing that eventually happens. And people just like clapping and yelling in the theater. It was just a great experience.
It's so funny with that series because it's so formulaic, but like once you know the formula, that makes it more entertaining.
It's
like,
so much more entertaining.
And the filmmakers really do kind of like play it up, and they know how to like use that. I love, you know, I won't say I love all of those movies, but 2 has a very, is there anything as good as the opening scene of 2 in this?
Well, no, but it comes the closest, I think.
I literally cannot see a log truck, and that you occasionally see those.
Yeah.
Lumber piled up on the back of a truck, and like, Final Destination 2, I'm just going to go around it.
Do you know those movies take place on Long Island? At least the first 2 do.
I believe that, yeah. I think I remember that.
But no, well, I will say this. I think, forget about the series in which it's contained in. The opening sequence of Final Destination 2 is like, I think honestly, one of the most harrowing, engaging, fun sequences in movies, right? Like in highway sequences in movies. It's just such a great, you can still watch it today and you can just be like, wow. Because there are just so much stuff happening there. And it definitely has there's stuff in this movie, in the newest one, that sort of like visually calls back to that movie for people who love that movie. There's some logs, I'll say, in this new one, but it has a couple of, I think, the best sequences in the whole series. The opening sequence is great, and it just has that spirit in it that it's crazy. It's been 14 years since the last one came out, which is nuts. It just seems like one of those series you could do one every couple of years and it would be fine.
Maybe that's why. But the fact that they didn't is maybe what makes this one, you know, it's not like Saw. Where do we go from here? It's every year and you're just cranking them out.
But really impressive, really great. And I will say this, it's just cool. We've talked a lot about on the show about how certain movies and types of movies are disappearing from movie theaters. They don't really make movies like this anymore. Obviously, horror is hugely popular. It's one of the few, I guess, like box office bulletproof like genres, right? Horror fans love horror movies and they'll go out to see them. But most of those horror movies are in like that low budget range, right? A24 is making, for the most part, like $5 to $10 million, you know, movies. This is a studio horror movie, a mid-budget studio horror movie. This does not get made a lot anymore. And it was the number one movie in the country. It made $100 million worldwide in its first weekend, which is crazy. It's holding up really well this week as we're recording this. But of course, they free this New Line, Warner Brothers, they only give it a 2-week theatrical window. It's going to be out on demand in 2 weeks, which is crazy to me. Like, believe in your shit, right? But like, it was really great because, like I said, theaters are packed. People were just loving it. And I'm like, this is a proof that people want this, right? People want to be able to sit in the same place with a bunch of other people and just have this experience, you know? And I'll say this is one of these crazy things you talk about that out of context. You seem like a monster, but a kid gets like brutally killed and people clapped because he deserved it.
You know, if you do that right, child murder can be a lot of fun. Assault in Precinct 13 does it beautifully.
This kid was a little shit. I'll tell you right now. He deserved it.
Oh, the one in Assault in Precinct 13 is actually a sweet little girl.
Yeah, no, it's true. No, this was like, he deserved it. So people were like, yeah, this is great.
I'm excited to see. I'm going to see Sinners tomorrow. Speaking of
Nice.
movies that by the time the show comes out, people have probably forgotten about or largely forgotten about. But finally, I'm getting a chance to do that. So
great, man. I love Sinners. It's good. We got some good little alley for movies. I'm seeing Mission Impossible on Monday, and then one's coming out this weekend. So when we're recording this, obviously, but yeah, it was just nice to see something so big and so fun and like not like gory as hell, just like crazy kills and like just there's something about it, and I think that series in general, I never really liked. The first one came out in 2000, like a year before 9/11, which if it had come out a year later, it never would, like they probably would have shelved it, right? Because it's a plane crash is like the main thing in that movie. That movie took itself super seriously, and I just did not dig it, very much.
It's like the worst in the series because of that, but it is, it's X-Files writers doing kind of an X-Files. I think it was originally pitched as an X-Files episode.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
So it's got a little bit of that kind of tone, which, the X-Files did comedy sometimes too, but that movie, was a little bit more straight-faced. But yeah, once you got to the sequel and it's like, we could do whatever the hell we want here, so let's have logs like blowing through cars and splattering people.
Yeah. It felt like with the second one, they looked at what people said about the first one, which was like they liked the concept. It was a successful movie, obviously, but people definitely were like, yeah, but it's like so like unbelievable that like these things would be happening to these people, like these weird, like almost like Rube Goldberg machines would be killing them.
Well, let's just amp that up and kind of lean into the ridiculousness.
Yeah. And I think like as whenever the series stays in that lane, it really is successful, and I think this latest one definitely does that to a huge degree. Did you know, though, I want to leave this before we get out of here, the directors of this movie, the directing team that made this movie, they were finalists on that really failed like American Idol for filmmakers show that Steven Spielberg tried to do called On the Lot. They were finalists on that show.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, what was Project Greenlight, the one Ben Affleck and Matt Damon did?
No. This is like, it was, I don't remember when this was. It was like right when American Idol was like at its biggest, and like Mark Burnett was like, we're going to do a movie one.
Vaguely remember that, but hardly at all.
Yeah. But they were finalists in that, and now they directed this movie.
Well, I was just reading today, they did some like an alien invasion movie or something like that came out a couple of years ago that I've heard is actually very good.
People definitely like it.
That kind of got them this job. So yes. I think I want to see them both.
Yeah, absolutely. John Watts, who obviously most famous now for directing the 3 Marvel Spider-Man movies, was like a big impetus producing this movie to get it because he loves the series. So he really pushed to get it back.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah. And one of the writers on it was one of the writers who helped bring back the Scream franchise with Radio Silence. So there's like an interesting group of people there who I think kind of like, I think there's an interesting group of people out there who definitely grew up or came of age around the time where this sort of like mid-90s to mid-2000s horror boom happened that really
franchise horror. Yeah, really, and if that's what's going to save the movies now in 2025, go for it.
Yeah, because I think like, that people, and this good conversation around this movie anyway, is that I think now it's hard to imagine a time where horror wasn't like a bankable thing. But there was a point like in the 90s where horror was basically theatrically dead, right? It was
it was a direct-to-video thing.
It was a direct-to-video thing, and it wasn't until...
in the days when you would rent stuff like Bad Taste and Brain Dead.
Yeah. It wasn't until the first Scream came out and really hit big that it drove this big interest. And then for a while, it was all of these like mid-budget studio horror, franchise horror movies, whether they're a franchise or by like, someone like Kevin Williamson, who was a big, part of driving this. And then that kind of went away and got replaced by the sort of like Blumhouse, it's kind of started with Saw, and then Paranormal Activity took that over, and that started Blumhouse, and that kind of Blumhouse A24 thing has kind of been the thing for a long time at this point. These movies that cost $5 million that like they only have to like make a little bit of money, and they're good. And then the A24 stuff, which is like all this elevated horror stuff, which is people can feel like, oh, we're getting scared, but we're also very smart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think there's room for all of it, obviously. But it's cool that this type of movie can maybe come back and do something, I don't know.
It's cool that any kind of movie is doing well right now. So like I said, if it is franchise horror, if that's what we're going to do, well, let's do something.
Yeah. I mean, Warner's just killing it right now, though, with the box office. They've had 3 basically smashes in a row with Minecraft, then Sinners, and then this. Like, they've just seem like they're like hitting it big time right now. But yeah, I mean, horror's great. We're going to talk about a couple more horror movies in this lineup, right? We got two more. I don't know is it Meet the Feebles a horror movie? I don't know if it really is.
No.
Okay. Yeah. So
it's horrific, certainly.
Yeah. But we got two more horror movies really in this Peter Jackson lineup to come before we hit the big movies. So we're going to talk about horror a little bit more, which will be fun. I think it's we haven't really done, like straight up horror movies yet, in this. Like we've done sort of like the elevator horror thing with Kusama a little bit, but we haven't done like this sort of like just like schlocky on the ground, horror stuff. So it should be fun to talk more about this stuff. But yeah, that's going to, I think, wrap up our bad taste episode. Next time, we're going to be talking about the demented puppet film, Meet the Feebles, and more about, Peter Jackson. If you would like to hear more of the show, Intrepid Filmographers, we're all over every podcast app. You use your podcast app of choice. If you like the show, please remember to rate and review us. Really, really helps. Subscribe. You can go to intrepidfilmographers.com. That'll take you to our Substack, which, we release podcasts there. You can subscribe there and you get the podcast every week. We also, we're going to start doing we have a newsletter that we're going to start doing as well. So that's something you can get a little insight into more of our movie tastes and more of what's going on more now than just, going back to these other movies that we're talking about on the show. But yeah, I'm really excited, to dig in deeper. It's going to be a lot of fun. Until next time, thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you to everybody who is watching or listening. And until next time, be good to one another. Later.